Ah, the Glock 19. It's a great gun. We all know it too well. But it could be better. There we go. So much better. What's up YouTube? KS Gun Guy. Thanks for joining me today. That little intro was just a preview of what we're going to be talking about today. What you have in front of you is a Glock 19 MOS, and I'm going to be sharing with you some of the experiences I've had building this gun out. You saw in the beginning of that preview, we started with just an average, ordinary, everyday Glock Gen 4 19 like this right here. And I started thinking, if I'm going to keep a Glock 19 and I'm going to use it in videos like this to compare with other guns, because a lot of folks consider the Glock 19 or Glocks in general as standards by which a lot of other guns are compared to. You may disagree or agree with that. I'm not here to debate that topic really, but if I am going to be using a Glock 19, I want something a little bit different. You may have seen my video on the 6-hour P320 RX like this, and I've been so impressed with this firearm, especially with the SIG Romeo 1 red dot and the raised suppressor height sights, that I decided, man, I really want to try that with a Glock and see what happens. Now, there are a lot of videos out there covering a wide variety of custom Glocks, especially ones with custom slides and all sorts of amazing work that's been done to it. Great stipple work on the grips and all those things. I don't have the budget to do a lot of that stuff, especially custom work on sides. I mean, we're talking lots of hundreds of dollars to get into that sort of thing. So I decided to look at another option, and one that comes straight from the Glock factory, and that is the Glock MOS. And really what the Glock MOS is just a basic Glock, and it's a modular optic system. That's what MOS stands for. And basically what it means is it's cut out or milled at the factory to accept a red dot. Now, from the factory, it comes with a plate just like this that covers the milled out part, and it makes it flush with the rest of the gun. So if you want to go with a Glock 19 and you decide, man, you know, you may want to add a red dot down the road, you'll have the option to do that because it'll have this plate on it, so it'll still be a normal Glock, but you can remove the plate and go from there. Now, one of the nice, unique things about the MOS system, it also comes with 4 plates that look like this. And these plates have different cutouts on them to accept a variety of different red dot sights. The one that you see in front of you is a Burris FastFire 3, and I'll talk about that specific red dot, but you can also mount other things like delta points and Vortex Venoms or Vipers, Trijicon RMRs, things like that. So there are a lot of other options, and you just have to pick the right plate for you. If you're wondering, a little spoiler alert for the Burris FastFire, it does take the plate number 1 on it. So just to kind of preview that a little bit. But the idea behind this video, and of course this is unloaded, I do have a magazine in here just kind of for, I guess, cool factor, if you will. But I want to talk to you about what I discovered in building this out and some of the challenges and hurdles and some lessons that I've learned in doing all this, because there were some challenges with making this video. So, oh, and you'll also notice I don't have a Glock rug or anything else under this. I had a comment on a video, a previous video I've done, that the background makes the guns a little bit harder to see. So I'm giving this a try, and I'd love your comments on that. If you can see this better, if this works out better for you, let me know. I'll continue to do this. That was a great comment, and I appreciate his feedback on that. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that I've done to this gun, because it did, of course, start out as a very stock Glock 19. You'll notice, I don't know how well the color comes through on the camera. Hopefully it'll come across reasonably well, especially if I tilt it a little bit. I'm actually cheating today. I'm using my cell phone as a viewfinder because I want to be able to actually see what you guys are seeing when I show you the red dot. So when I did the SIG RX, it didn't come across as well as I wanted to. So lesson learned there. So this is a gray frame. Now MOSs that I'm aware of don't come with different color frames or anything like that. If you have found one, let me know, share in the comments. Others might be looking for them. So what I actually did is I got a gray frame Glock 19. That was actually this one right here. And of course, this one is unloaded as well. I just had the magazine in for, again, comparison or cool factor, whatever. So this was a gray frame, and I ended up taking the gray frame and putting it on the MOS. Yes, I know the serial numbers won't match. At the end of the day, a lot of serial numbers don't match, and that's not really critical for Glock 19s or anything. This isn't an heirloom or a war find or anything like that. This is just a Glock 19. So I ended up doing that because I really liked the look of the gray frame, and I just frankly wanted to do it. Some other things that I've done to this from an internal standpoint, and I'll wheel in a little bit of footage of taking apart the triggers and everything. I have yet to do any sort of a full disassembly of a firearm beyond field stripping, and I still haven't decided if I really want to do that. I recorded one, I thought about doing it, and then I just thought, you know, so many people have done this, and they've done it probably better than I have. So I don't know that I really want to bore you with those things. So I'll do kind of a fast forward version of that as we're talking about this. But from an internal standpoint, everything in this gun is basically replaced. So all of the springs are Zev springs, and then I have a Zev Tech connector in here as well. Now the trigger on this, and I'll talk specifically about this trigger and the other components, some of the stats about them. Hopefully you can see that reasonably well. This is actually an Overwatch Precision trigger, so I'll talk about some pros and cons of that. By and large, I like it. Spoiler alert, but again, some pros and cons. So everything internally has been replaced with the exception of the firing pin. Now everything was polished, of course, kind of that 25-cent polish job or trigger job. I did all of that, but aside from the firing pin, everything else has been completely replaced on it. So Overwatch Precision trigger. And then the Burris FastFire, of course, and again, I'll talk more specifically about the stats on that and the experience of installing that, because there's some things that you might find handy to know if you're thinking about installing the Burris FastFire and what you might be getting into. And then the sights on this, and you may be chuckling to yourself, my gosh, those sights are enormous. Well, I sort of think that too. These are Dawson Precision sights. And I'll talk about how high they are and what they are and everything here in just a moment when I kind of dive deep into them. But they're really tall. In fact, they're so tall, I decided to go with ones that are a little bit shorter than that. I definitely wanted to make sure that I co-witnessed with the red dot. But these sights, well, they do co-witness, but man, they are super tall, and they really cut into the sight line of the red dot. Not so much that I can't shoot it. I'll wheel in some shooting footage of this here in just a little bit, and it was still a pleasure to shoot at the range, but I would like a little bit more of a field of vision with the Burris FastFire. So again, I'll show you that here in just a moment. And then if you've seen my other Glock 19 video or some of my other videos where I wheel this in, from an external standpoint, this is still the Zev Technologies dimpled barrel right there. You can see the dimples on that. I just think it's kind of a cool looking barrel. It does not improve accuracy, or at least it doesn't improve my accuracy, but I like the look of it. And then I've got the titanium Zev Tech pins in here, and this is a titanium extended slide release, so or takedown lever rather. So really pretty much the entire gun has been overhauled. I haven't done so. That's kind of an overview of the gun and what I've done to it. So let's dive a little bit deeper into the trigger. And again, this is an Overwatch Precision trigger. I think they used to be Glock Craft, if I'm not mistaken. So I like the look of it. I mean, it's black, and it's got kind of a gold safety lever or dingus in it, which is kind of nice. It was drop-in, and it does come with, or at least the version that I got, not only has the trigger shoe, but it also came with the trigger bar as well. And when I first got it and first looked at the trigger bar, I kind of thought, man, I'm going to have to polish this because it looked like a stock OEM trigger bar, and it started out that way for sure. I think they do order OEM trigger bars, but they actually coat it with an MP3 coating, which I'm just kind of learning about. But I know that it's a coating that kind of gives it a dry lubricity. So it is very smooth in the gun. I didn't have to do any polishing or anything. In fact, don't do any polishing if you decide to go this route or anything with an MP3 coating, because I think it would strip off that coating, and at the end of the day, I think you'd be doing yourself potentially a disservice unless you just really wanted to do it. And of course, personal preference rules in that matter. But it is a flat-faced trigger. However, they've got two different versions. This is the TAC or TAC version. They also have, and I think it's a DAC or a DAT version. I didn't really pay as much attention to that. The big difference is this one actually has a notch at the very bottom that comes back out, so it's not 100% flat versus the other trigger that is 100% flat. I did want the notch in there, so just a little bit to kind of catch my finger as I'm pulling the trigger, which I really like quite a bit. One big thing about this trigger, and in my research of triggers, I found that some aftermarket triggers for Glocks disable safeties. I don't know how true that is now. Perhaps they've done a better job of milling them, especially when they don't order OEM parts and add their parts to it. But it's something to pay attention to and be mindful of, because if you're disabling safeties or anything like that, you know, you run the risk of having problems of various sorts. But again, this is just my opinion. I'm not telling you what to do at all, but just maybe some things to consider and some things that I learned as I researched. So this does have it's an OEM trigger bar, so it does not defeat the safeties, and that's certainly important to me. Now, this trigger is not adjustable for pre-travel or over-travel. There are some triggers out there that are adjustable. I kind of felt, you know, I'll try this and see if it works, and if I feel like I need to do some adjusting and customizing, I'll go with a different trigger. This one works just fine for me, so that wasn't a big deal. I will tell you that, and again, this is unloaded, that it's basically ready to go. There really is no take up or maybe a millimeter of take up. So to me, that's pretty awesome. I didn't feel like any adjusting needed to be done anyways. So not a big deal to me. It's a great trigger. It's a very smooth trigger in combination with the other internal components that are in there. It's extremely smooth and ready to go. It's flat-faced, and at first I thought, because I naturally shoot with really more the second knuckle, not my pad of my finger. I know some people would say that's a really bad habit, but that's just how I've always shot guns, and I tend to shoot a little bit more accurately doing that. But anyways, so I thought maybe the flat-faced trigger might be a problem with that, but in this case it really wasn't. It was a pleasure to shoot at the range, and great. It was a solid trigger. So I give a thumbs up to that. There's one thing to note, however, on the safety lever. I have had to file just a tiny, hardly any material, but just a little bit from the very back of the safety dingus, and I might have to do a tiny bit more. I'm trying to be careful to keep the safety intact, and I've got a ways to go before that would potentially be a risk. But it was rubbing up against the back of the trigger housing just a little bit. So I'm trying to smooth that out just a little, and it is all aluminum, so I don't really mind very carefully milling out just a little bit of that safety lever material. So your mileage may vary on that a little bit. I may have gotten one that was the tolerances might have been a little bit too tight. So anyway, the next thing is the Burris FastFire, and I've got to get my cheat sheet here a little bit. So the Burris FastFire, I actually got this on Amazon, and I think they list on Amazon for maybe $230, $240. Now that's a far cry from things like Trigicons, which run $500, $600. So if I was going to experiment with this, I really didn't want to invest basically the cost of another gun just in the red dot. And I've heard a lot of great things about the Burris FastFire, and my experience so far has been equally as good. Now, a couple of things about it. It is a 3 MOA. It is adjustable for both windage and elevation, which is great, and the adjustments are all on the outside. They're easy to get to. I know with one of the red dots, I think it's the Vortex Viper, which is a shortened red dot. It's a good-looking red dot. I know that the locking mechanisms to lock in windage and elevation actually sit behind the red dot, so it would be between the sight and the red dot. Unfortunately, you can't get to it if you have sights on it, especially suppressor height sights. So that was an immediate no for me. I really wanted to try the Viper, but that just immediately I said no on that. Now there's also a Vortex Venom, and it's about the same height as this. It might be a tiny bit taller than this. It was hard to find specs on the height of the red dot in terms of being able to co-witness, but I think they're very similar, and the Venom does not have the locking mechanisms on the back, so it might be another option for you. I think it's much more similar to the Burris FastFire, also from a cost standpoint. So it does have an on-off button, and the first time you press this button, and here's where I need to see if my phone will work, and it may be super tough to see. I got to make sure that it's even on. It is, but it's so bright in here you can't see it. So the auto, I'm gonna disable, and the next option, again, I have to cheat. Yeah, it is on. Okay. I don't know how well you can see. I think you could probably see it a little bit. So your first click is auto, and then you have 4 more clicks to go from brightest to dimmest. I have found on the range that I don't care for auto. In fact, I don't like most things on auto. I would rather be able to control it. I keep it on the second lowest setting at the range. That seems to work just fine for me. Of course, this is your mileage may vary situation. You may want it brighter or dimmer, but you do have some options on there. And once you cycle through, I don't know how well you're going to be able to see, maybe able to see that. Once you cycle through, it will then turn itself off, and it actually has 1 more to go, and it is off. It's not a press and hold and then it turns off sort of thing. Now, one bummer with this, it does not have an auto off from what I've read, so be sure that you do turn it off, otherwise the battery, of course, will drain over time. It does come with a cover on it. I found with these sights, the cover does not go on it, so I may either have to kind of cut the cover. There's a little bar that won't fit here. May have to cut that up a little bit to be able to use the cover, but hopefully this is durable enough, and if I keep the gun in a lined bag, it should be okay. But I'll probably wheel in some reports down the road on that to see how that works for me. So the Burris FastFire. Now, as far as the installation goes, both the Glock MOS and the Burris FastFire come with a variety of screws, and none of those screws worked. So I'll wheel in these guys here. This is a big old bag of screws, and these are M3 by 7 millimeter, and I will put the links in the video for some of these different items here, so you can hopefully find them relatively easily. This was another Amazon find. I got a bag of 100 of these for, I think it was $7, $8, something like that, and I donated a bunch to Centerfire Shooting Sports, and I'll keep some on hand. But the 7 millimeter, and it's a 0.5 thread pitch, seem to work very well. They sit flush with the bottom of the plate that I mounted the Burris to, so with a little bit of Loctite, I seem to be able to capture the most amount of threads on the screw that I can to make sure that the Burris stays on the gun. I know some other reviewers have recommended the 6 millimeter screw. That'll work as well, but I think, you know, getting another thread or two in there to make sure that it's secure is always a plus. So if you can get them, I would go with the 7 millimeter. Once I did that, the Burris was fine. To mount the plate itself to the gun before the red dot went on, the screws that came with the Glock did just fine. So those screws aren't a big deal at all. It's just the one to mount the red dot. And I understand that some other red dots, it's the same situation. You have to find aftermarket screws, or you have to contact the company, and they'll send you specific screws for the Glock MOS. So make sure to do a little bit of research if you're doing a build kind of like this to make sure you're getting the right mounting hardware, just so this doesn't fly off at the range and get damaged or anything like that. None of us want that to happen. So that's my experience with the red dot. Overall, it's been great, and hopefully you'll see that on the range. As far as the sights go, again, Dawson Precision sights. I got to wheel in my stats on this because a couple of things to share with you on these. With the Burris FastFire and the Vortex Venom, and there might be some other red dots as well, these are pretty tall red dots. They're a little bit more economical, and I think you sacrifice your depth a little bit with more economical sights. Things like the Trigicon RMR sit much lower, so it's much easier to find sights that co-witness if co-witnessing is important to you. So I had to be a little bit more creative. Now I understand that the Trigicon night sights, the suppressor height ones that I think are just under, I think 0.4, 0.395 for rear height, and I think they're like a 0.36 or 3.5 on the front height. And I think that's millimeters. Those will work with the Burris FastFire. They will co-witness, but they don't 100% co-witness from what I understand. It's more like maybe an 80%, 70% co-witness. And again, I really wanted something that fully co-witnessed. So I went with these, and again, Dawson Precision. These actually have, and I don't know how well you can see. I'm going to try and kind of shove this in your face here a little bit so you can see. These actually have the fiber optic reticles in them. So the green on the back and the red in the front. And the height on these sights, the rear is 0.495 and the front is 0.485. And again, these are ginormous. They make the view through the red dot, I would say, almost a little bit complicated. And I didn't find that necessarily to be the case on the range. I was able to shoot, and it was pleasurable to shoot. It wasn't too much going on, but that was definitely a concern. However, again, these sit really high. So what I've done, and I don't have them here yet, I've ordered the Dawson Precision sights that are actually 0.395 in the back and 0.390 in the front, and I've actually done away with the fiber optic. The fiber optic is great. I really like fiber optic, but if I'm concentrating on the red dot, and if the focus is really to shoot with the red dot, I want something to co-witness, but I don't want something that I may fall back and lean on and develop some bad habits. So I went with the solid sights. They'll co-witness just fine, and I think they're plenty high enough, but they will sit lower so there's a better field of vision. I'm not cutting off quite so much of the red dot to be able to enjoy shooting, but still, again, be able to have the luxury of co-witnessing. So just sharing a little bit of that experience. One other thing about Dawson Precision, although they've got a lot of great options on their website, and my experience is they're not a bad company, but their return policy is a little firm. You've got to go through some hoops to be able to do a return, and unfortunately, one of the hoops is you can't. The sights can't be used at all, and unfortunately, if you're gonna kind of play around with sights and see if they work for you or not, you kind of have to use them a little bit. In other words, installing them on a gun, so they won't take these back. So I'll have to end up selling them on my own. You also have to fill out some extra paperwork and put numbers on boxes and that sort of thing. And I think that's too many hoops for somebody to go through if they just want to return a product, especially if they want to switch it out for another one of that company's products. I think making it easier would be a little bit nicer. That's my 2 cents on that. Again, it's a fine company, nothing wrong with them, but the return policy is a little bit firm, so just be aware of that. That's really it for the extra stuff here. There isn't much to talk about with the frame and installing that and everything. A lot of you know how to install frames and various internal parts, that sort of thing. But that's been my experience with this. So let's take a look at how this does at the range.
You're supposed to.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that footage at the range. And so, what are my thoughts of this overall? First, it's been a really fun project to go through. There have been a couple of hurdles, as I've mentioned, but with a little bit of research and a little bit of tinkering and experimenting, it's turned into a really great build. And it's a Glock 19 that I can be excited about and proud about. Not that other Glock 19s aren't great, but something that's just a little bit more unusual and it has a few more features that I can enjoy again, because I was getting a little tired with the regular old everyday Glock. So if you have an opportunity to do something like this, it might be a fun project for you. Be sure to know that you're looking into basically getting in the cost of 1.5 or possibly 2 Glocks, basically, to put something like this together. So that part's a little bit of a bummer, but at the end of the day, you have something that's kind of fun and exciting and new and different for you. So I really hope you enjoyed this. I will share more experiences with this and some of my other guns over the coming months. Especially after SHOT Show comes out. There will be some other really exciting things coming down the pipeline. Thanks for joining me today. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share, and I will see you later.